Thank you for coming. I'm going to talk about gambling in the local community, and I'm going to do it from a gambler's perspective. And a lot of what we heard just before this session about John and Des and Michael, actually you can see similarities in this one. Even I'm concentrating on ethnic minority people. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give just a little bit of introduction, what I have done, and the research framework, and the social and cultural capital, and habitus. And also then I'm going to talk about case studies, and gambling in diverse societies, and access to gambling venues in the local community, and how these people have become introduced to gambling, something which is quite new for them, and the social and cultural environment and the family relationships, and also how dramatic the fall can be. Then I will have a bit of a conclusion. So this is a question we have asked quite many times: why are actually people gambling in excess? And there's a lot of research going around, and there is some strategies to minimize individual and family community harm, but still we have quite a lot of excessive gambling as a societal problem. The forms and the kind of different gambling have changed, so we are now more in gambling where you don't need a physical place any longer. You can gamble anywhere, at home, anywhere. But still, the same problems will arise. There is stress and hardship on the gambler and on the family and their children. So I'm going to present 21 case studies from minority ethnic groups and how they actually tell their stories from non-gambling into actually excessive gambling. So they come from a non-gambling environment and go to a gambling environment, and how that affects their focus on gambling. How to become introduced, and the social environment of a gambling venue, how they experience that, and their professional, social, and cultural isolation. So my research focus is about societal acceptance of gambling and its influence on the citizens. So for instance, if you grow up in a society where there is a lot of gambling accepted, you perhaps is more likely to understand the pitfalls of gambling. But also if you grow up in an environment where you have no experience of gambling, or it's society that is more or less prohibit or fully or partly gambling, and suddenly you become involved in gambling, and why are you doing that in your adopted society? So theoretically, I look at it from that you grow up in a society where you actually take on the social and cultural environment, tradition and customs, and that's be part of you, and it's underpinned your behavior and how you look at your life. So this created social identity within the social and cultural environment, and your created habitus, the way you actually behave and think about life, attitudes. This what we can call, from Bourdieu says, socialized subjectivity, actually forms how you approach your life and what you do, and it guides your everyday life. And for these people, gambling activities was not at all part of their social and cultural environment before they came to Australia. So the sample has 21 case studies, and they were collected by Multicultural Problem Gambling Services. So it's a convenient sample. There's no selection of that. And it is based on the clients the counsellor had during the research period. And it was the responses of data is structured around questions that were given to the counsellors. All the clients, they saw gambling counsellor which were fluent in their native language. So the information is the client's recollections, and is information volunteered by them and from their perspective, and also supported by the counsellor's information of them. So remember, this sample is not representative for all people coming from a multicultural background, minority background, or living in suburbs or where there is a lot of gambling. So it shouldn't be generalized to all groups. I have 21 people, and I'm talking about 21 people. But even I can say people are unique, but we hear the same stories coming back several times. So I had 21 people, and 9 of them were females, 12 males. And here you can see in age-wise, the men were younger than the females. And there was only, none of the men was in the 50 to 65, but 5 of the females were in that group. And in relation to marital status, 7 of the males were married or living in de facto. And for the women, they were both married or they were widowed. They were asked about their socioeconomic status, and it is self-reported. And we can see here that the females were putting themselves mainly in the middle status level. None of them thought they had a high socioeconomic status, while the men were more inclined to put themselves in the middle status category, and a few of them were in the high, thought they're high socioeconomic. And we have unemployed people among the men, and they put themselves as a low socioeconomic status. So this is a group which is more likely not to gamble over internet or over smartphone. They are more about gambling with electronic gaming machines. So 66%, or 14 of them, were born outside Australia. They came in from Cambodia, Lebanon, Greece, Italy, China, Colombia, Indonesia, Argentina, or Sri Lanka, and Iran. And 1/3 of them were born in Australia. But at least one of their parents had an ethnic minority background. And all of them lived in residential areas or community areas where they have ample access to gambling opportunities, especially in the local sports club and RSL's club. The females, they only played on electronic gaming machines. The males, 2/3 of them played on only on electronic gaming machines, but there was 1/3 of the men who actually played on both gaming machines and blackjack, roulette, cards, and betting on horses. So, but the dominating part here is actually electronic gaming machine or poker machines, where we perhaps say in more local. So they started to gamble only when they came in contact with gambling activities in the local community in Australia. So none of them had gambled before. And even 2 people here, they were 60 and 65, coming from South America, they only gambled in Australia. Even if they went back to their home country and had gambling issues, they still didn't gamble because it wasn't socially and culturally accepted for them to go to a gambling venue. So it was clearly here, as I see it, focused on the social environment which allowed them to gamble or not to gamble. So how do we get introduced to gambling? And I mean, in Australia, and I think it's the same in New Zealand, it's quite common you go to a local club for have a drink after work or have a lunch, or because it's cheap, and sometimes they're cheap entertainment. So it's quite a common way. And there is gambling, but your aim to go that was perhaps not to gamble, but to have a social activity. But we have exceptions. I have 4 young men in the sample, and they were all under 35. And they actually went to the club by themselves with the aim to gamble, not to socialize. They didn't go there with friends, they went there by themselves. And this perhaps can see that we can say we are more in a mobile area. These young men didn't really need an introduction. They were so interested in gambling, so they didn't need anyone to help them, telling them the rope of how gambling was done, or things like that. What was so surprising, even if they could be quite some time ago since they started, because some of them just took about 4 years, but some of them have been gambling for 10, 20 years, but they all remember their first visit when they gambled, first gambling, and which for me it's surprising, but it was a significant event which actually was still in their minds. So why were these people suddenly going from, there was a social event, there was a new establishment, and for instance for this 29-year-old male, they happened to open a gambling venue just very close to his workplace. So it was really easy to just go over at the lunchtime to have lunch. But then after a while, every time he had a possibility, he went just over the road and went to a gambling venue. So the closeness here, or the easy access, made him actually wanted to go to a gamble. So then you can have a positive or a negative outcome of your gambling. And the results can actually, in a way, be the same. So in the first one here, a person, he came about 4 years ago, and his brother took him to a club. And his brother lost 150. And he thought that was really unfair in a way. So he gambled and tried to win the money back. And that night he lost 2,000, which was quite a reasonable high amount. But then we have the other one here, the younger one. He won $450 the first time, and he thought he had luck at that special club. So he was a regular and went back because he had a good luck at that club. Then also, there is a difference between gambling and you put in $20, and when they are finished, you just go home. But this was not really what was the case here. They actually gambled until everything was lost, as we heard with stories just before this session. So this 45-year-old man, he continued to gamble. He had lost his house, he had lost everything, he lost his family, but he still strongly believed he would turn it around and he would actually get everything back. There's a really strong notion that is everything going to be solved, just I'm winning back my money. So I think these quotes is quite common, that they want to chase the losses and I want to get back. All of them said that they actually thought they could win back the losses. But for these people coming here, they came to Australia of different reasons, and they have different experience from before. So, in a way, gambling is a double-edged sword here in a way, that gambling in a way helped them overcome their trauma and their problem, their isolation. But at some time, it created more problem. So it was a circle here. So for many of them, there was a problem-free zone. There was no one questioned their language or whatever they're doing and how long time they were sitting there. So it was problem-free. And several of them said they were isolated in society. They were not recognized in their profession. They had difficult from their cultural, social environment. Some of them couldn't actually speak English, had different to fit into the society. But also it was exciting. It was exciting to gamble and exciting to see if I could win. So this 56-year-old female, she really liked the interaction with a poker machine. So it was soothing and problem-free. And it really helped her forget the real world. So she has a kind of interaction with a machine. And as one of, I think of a desk said, he even patted the machine up before. So this is really was her world. She was one with a machine, and she really felt well, and she forgot all her problems and concerns. So she suddenly felt very good about herself, which she didn't do outside. And freedom, she could do whatever win. And as you saw, I think it was it Michael said he was called Sir. Everyone is very well treated, and you are. So, and she could smoke. That was the time she could smoke. And that reality disappeared, and the pain and isolation. So these are stories they have. They actually try to get away from some other things to cope with their everyday life. So when do you realize you have a gambling problem? And for some of them, it really didn't hit them until everything was lost. So, for instance, this person, he lost 5,000 in an evening, and then suddenly he didn't have any money left. But he wasn't really prepared to actually stop gambling. He just wanted to lower and to get the money back. And this is a recurring story with many of them. But also, when it gets too far, when they suddenly, the family recognizes it and they can't take care of their children because they gamble. So this person here was kicked out from his home, and his grandfather was taking care of him. But and the grandfather was taking care of his financial, his money. But still, he borrowed money, and he continued to gamble. And his grandfather naturally didn't know that, but he was on his way to lose his job and everything. And also, here's another one, a female. She really felt relaxed. She liked it. And she, in a way, I can see she's doing it in a protest against her husband because she thinks he's a control freak, stingy, and overcritical. But she had lost 550 a week, and she wanted to decrease it, but not stop. Not stopping, just have it on a manageable level. And then there comes the gambling, which was also said in before, that anxiety, difficult to sleep, and things like that comes into it. So it becomes other physical or mental problems comes in. So excessive gambling, increase in loss of money. What a gambler experienced was physical and mental health problems, anxiety and depression. And the family independence, stress, financial and relationship conflict. So the gambling led to further gambling, led to losses, and that was a circle. You try to recoup the money is not coming, and then it gets a financial problem, get further. And also it gets so you get into the legal problem. That when you have borrowed enough, you have embezzled money, and you had court caught up with you, as we heard of a judge earlier today, you have to go to prison. So that was also two of the people in here was actually on the end. We had lost everything, and they had borrowed money, or they have stolen money, which means that they not only had the financial problems, but also the family. Oh, am I? So the support of the family was really important, but there was actually a limit of it. When you go over the limit, the family can't actually continue. So it becomes a serious family issue, and the family sets ultimatum that you actually have to stop, or we take over your money. But as we saw with the young male, he actually was thrown out of the house. And they lose their job. So, a really sad story with this person. She actually had a really good life. She was really had gamble a bit, but under control. But then suddenly she lost everything. And she lost her house, her superannuation, and everything. So she's a 65-year-old person, had to go home and live with her sister. And she isn't paying for her food or accommodation. And her sister takes her to work and picks her up, because that's why you're trying to get her to not gamble. So what I'm trying to show with this one very quickly is that, from my point of view, is that the social and cultural environment created, or they had to re-evaluate, because they weren't used to a social and cultural environment where gambling. So the isolation, professional, social and cultural, on earlier trauma actually got them into the gambling, and for them they didn't find in the site, there might be, but they didn't find alternative activities to help them with it. So the gambling was a solution, and it was easily accessible in their community. So the social environment and types of people seek out gambling activities. Gambling became an activity that was to solve other problems. And gambling became their rescue with easy access in the home community. And facilitated by the gambling venues, a friendly environment, you're really a nice person, that they are very polite to you, and acceptance of everyone, and long opening hour. And you don't need to talk, you don't need to show that you didn't have English as a first language. So what my point is, we have a lot of research about it, and we know there are problems, but we actually have to look behind the individual and look more on the wider group of people in the society that bears the effect of excessive gambling. Because it's not just a gambler, there's a family, and there's a work, and there's everything around it. So that was, and I have written about it in my book, and that's my, and thank you very much.
Kia ora, Charlotte. Thank you very much. We have time for some questions.
I'm just wondering if, out of your 21 clients, or that you researched, do you have a breakdown of their ethnicity?
Of their ethnicity?
Yeah, of the 21.
Yes, they come from Cambodia, Iran, South America, Indonesia, Argentina, yes. Yes, something like that. I had it everywhere. Oh, Cambodia, Lebanon, Greece, Italy, China, Colombia, Indonesia, Argentina, Sri Lanka, and Iran. And these were the clients that the councillor had at that time. This is not really representative of what we do, but also councillor were in their native language.
Oh, okay. I wondered if the research was carried out in their language.
Yeah, the councillor, the information comes from the councillor.
Yes.
And I wasn't involved, so it was one was step because I'm not that bilingual. So it was by the councillor in the native culture and language who actually responded, and they responded to the question.
Thanks, Charlotte. Good talk. Do you have any indication of outcome for these people in treatment or in therapy of some sort?
Yeah, they went to the treatment. There is an 8-week program they had to follow. And some of the councillors would know them from coming back and leave again. But very few of them stay for the 8-week program. They come one or twice and then they leave. And then they think they can manage it, and when it got worse, they come back again. So for some of the councillors, the clients was well known, because they had them over several years.
But there's no indication of which ones were being successful in terms of the intervention and those that weren't?
Not really, but if you go to prison, you can't gamble.
Say again?
If you go to prison, you can't gamble. So I mean, that's one way to say that you can't gamble. You might do. No.
I was wondering, just from what you're saying, whether the language issue, if you like, or the language barrier, whether there was any extent, whether if these people were able to feel more comfortable in Australian as a second language.
Yeah, they sought a counsellor in their own language just because they were more comfortable and they could understand it. And some of them actually go to the club's gambling venue because you don't need to speak there. You'll be nicely welcomed and everything and treated, and you don't need to show wherever you are. So it's a very nice, comfortable environment.
Enticing.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, Charlotte, welcome to New Zealand.
Thank you.
My name is Mahina. I think my concern is that there's a lot of Māori that are migrating over to Australia, and they're being disconnected from their communities and their families, their sports codes. So when they go over to Australia, they haven't got a lot of experiences in the environments that they have here, so they start going to the poker venues.
Yeah, because it is, I mean, it's open along hours, and I think it is 18 hours a day. So there's a lot of time. If you don't have a job or you don't have other things which can help you, it's a place where it is no entry fee actually. You can sit there.
So here in New Zealand, we provide services and treatments for them that are free of service. Would out of New Zealand people that move over to Australia that are involved, involved in gambling, would they have the same type of supports that they receive here for free over here in Australia?
Yeah, I'm sure that this was just a concentration of, of course, they had multilingual counsellor, but then we have other counselling services in Australia where you have English as a first language.
So do they, the services that they get over there, if they are gamblers, I'm just saying because I've got a lot of people that I know that are Māori over there, would they be free or would they have to pay for them?
I assume it's free, but that's my assumption. But I'm not really involved in the treatment as such. I did the research, and the counsellor was the one who actually. But I can give you a.
Charlotte, have you done any research on the host responsibility in regards to the clubs and poker venues over in Australia at all?
I had interviewed quite a lot of people in the clubs and things, and they were not really happy about research.
I've been to a few of those pubs and
No,
clubs over
yes,
here in Australia. It'd be really good if we start advocating on behalf of proper gambling in regards to host responsibility. It's quite appalling.
Yeah, but it was very touchy. You're a bit quite scary, actually. They weren't really encouraging of the research, and not the government either.
Time for one more question.
What was the focus of the treatment? You said there was an 8-week treatment that they received. So was it basic addiction, one-on-one kind of thing, or was it something that addressed the difficulty of acculturation?
It is a program where the multicultural gambling service have their program, and it's a service which runs in Australia. And when at that time there was an 8-stage program, and you should start and then you should follow it over, and then you come back when you need it. But what is involved in each state, I'm not aware of, because that was not my focus. It was the people and the social and cultural environment.
So that's in Victoria. That's what happens in Victoria because it doesn't happen in Sydney.
This is New South Wales, I think.
No, I'm just saying the research, the resources that they get for that particular program happens in Victoria.
No, this is from New South Wales. I've been before in Sydney, so I moved to Victoria. But this is a New South Wales study.
Big place, New South Wales, whereabouts in there?
Yes.
Is it Sydney?
I prefer not to say it exactly, just because some people might recognise themselves, and I don't want to I don't want to get it. But big multicultural areas in Sydney, you doesn't need to think hard where you can find them.
Okay. Some nice questions here coming down to a more fine details of it. For me, working, representing PGF in Dunedin without an Asian Family Services or whatever, I have had up to 15 different ethnicities over about 5 years, and what I found there, Charlotte, certainly reflects my experience. Not only are they exposed to new risks with gambling, they are isolated from their normal supports.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a double whammy on it, and certainly the experience of finding acceptance in a pokie path.
And also a shame when you get into trouble and get your family involved, and so it's really a lot of difficulties around it, and you are isolated in society and in the family.
Thank you very much. Could we show our appreciation for that?